Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I want to say a specific welcoming word to the members of the media that are here. Thank you for taking the time to attend this media conference. I also want to thank the members of the media that are watching this via live streaming on AfriForum's Facebook page, but also AfriForum members watching. Baie dankie aan AfriForum se lede. Die feit, ons het vanoggend gestaan op 221.420 lede. Dit is julle ondersteuning wat dit moontlik maak dat advokaat Gerrie Nel en sy span by AfriForum se privaat vervolgingseenheid kan veg vir geregtigheid. Julle maak AfriForum sterk, baie dankie daarvoor. I was just thanking AfriForum's members. Everything we do is funded solely by members' contributions. So we also welcome them via the live streaming on which they watch. I want to start off by first giving feedback on the activities of AfriForum's private prosecution unit in cases that we're not speaking about today, but just to bring you up to speed. We've had a number of successes which we are very happy about, and we want to thank Advocate Nel and his team for the difference that they are making. As you know, initially the National Prosecuting Authority decided not to prosecute Duduzane Zuma in a case of culpable homicide. You know, after we said that we want to prosecute privately, the NPA changed their minds, and that case is before the courts, and we are going to see a judgment on Friday in the Randburg Magistrates Court. For us, the mere fact that this court case took place is already a victory, irrespective of what happens on Friday. The fact that the efforts failed to scrap the case from Mr. Zuma's legal team showed that there was a prima facie case, and all we wanted was to make sure that he got his day in court. So for us, that is already a victory. Also, with regard to the Grace Mugabe case, we were informed by the NPA that they have started the process for extradition of Mrs. Grace Mugabe for the assault of Gabriella Engels. You know that initially Mrs. Mugabe was given diplomatic immunity. We had to go to court to have that overturned, and that paved the way for this case to go ahead. And it's also important to show that it doesn't matter who you are, that you should be held accountable if you transgress our country's laws. Then another case, which many of you don't know about probably, it's a rape case of Renilwe Mutsepe. He's a young student from Garankuwa who was raped. Initially, the rapist's parents tried to sweep this under the carpet. A family came to us for assistance, and we are proud to announce that there was a guilty judgment against the rapist, and we are going to see on Monday, we're going to see the sentencing in that case. For us it's important, this is not a well-known public figure, but we believe justice should be served for everyone. And even young people that have no access to resources to make sure that there is justice. In this case, we were successful to make sure that the rapist is held accountable, and it's also part of our broader fight against the abuse of women and children that is a scourge in our society. Another case with regard to Colonel Karagaya. If you don't know who he is, he was the head of intelligence in Rwanda. He was murdered in Sandton, despite the fact that the police knew who the perpetrators were. There was a 5-year delay to see any form of action. After Advocate Nel and his team became involved, there was a a judicial inquiry, which we were able to stop to say that there was enough evidence. And we were also informed by the NPA that extradition process has started to get the 2 assassins extradited to the country. So for us, that's important. It also sends a clear message to anybody outside of the country that if you're going to use our shores to commit the crime, you will be held accountable. Then another success is that you know that initially there was a decision not to prosecute Alexei Bissos, who is the son of George Bissos, for he assaulted his wife Monique van Oosterhout, and we also had a success when we said that we want to prosecute privately. The NPA now changed their mind, and Alexei Bissos will have his day in court for breaking 6 of his wife's ribs. Then with regard to the fourth case, our stance, and you will know that Advocate Nel said it quite strongly on many occasions, is that we don't like bullies. If you're a person in a powerful position, but also if you're a multinational company, you cannot use your resources to bully ordinary people. And we assisted the family in the Gerrie family. Their brother died in a Fort Cougar fire. There is an inquiry into that matter where Advocate Nel represented the family, and we are very happy how the proceedings went, and we are confident that we have a strong case. Then another big case coming on the 22nd of July, is a case against the Speaker of Parliament, Mrs. Thandi Modise. You know, there was a case against her with regard to neglect of animals on a farm by the SPCA. Also in that case, the NPA refused to prosecute, and Advocate Nel and his team is assisting the SPCA, and that first appearance of Ms. Thandi Modise would be on the 22nd of July in the Potchefstroom Regional Court. We're looking forward to that. As you know, there was a warrant of arrest for Mrs. Modise because she did not attend the first court case, but that warrant was held over for her appearance on the 22nd of July. This is just some feedback. There's a number of other cases that, if you wonder, afterwards you can ask questions on those. But because of time, I'm not going to look into all the cases. What we are here for today is to make sure that there's equality before the law in our country, and nobody should be above the law. It doesn't matter if your surname is Malema or Kriel. If you transgress the law, you should be held accountable. But unfortunately, because the NPA is reluctant to prosecute Mr. Malema, Julius Malema, in many cases, Mr. Malema is starting to think that he's untouchable and he is acting with impunity. And we believe that can never be allowed, that somebody, that the NPA does not prosecute simply because of somebody's political position. Politics should not play a role. The NPA should prosecute without fear, favor, or prejudice. That is why we are here today, to tell you what steps we are going to take to make sure that Mr. Malema is held accountable. One of the successes we already had is, you will remember, we lodged a complaint against Mr. Malema for statements he made in Bloemfontein, where he incited people to transgress the law and occupy land. That case has been postponed on various occasions because Mr. Malema was challenging the legislation under which he was charged. And we are thankful that recently Mr. Malema was not successful with his effort to have that legislation scrapped. And he'll probably go to the Constitutional Court. We are looking forward to that, so that justice can be done in that case. Other successes over the last 2 years, we've had 5 cost orders against Mr. Malema and the EFF with regard to legal processes in various cases. They have already paid 3 of those cost orders to an amount of more than 340,000 Rand. And We are working on the other two. One of them needs to be taxed, a cost order. The other, there's an appeal process going on. But in the end, we will receive more than R500,000 from Mr. Malema. That is just with regard to the successes we've had. But there are 3 other cases, strong cases, that we feel strongly about. But we are going to make sure that those cases are taken forward. We've been involved in them for many months and in some cases many years. But we are tired of waiting for the NPA to do their job. But I'm not going to give you the details. I have 2 much more clever people on both sides of me who can tell you about that. Of course, you know Advocate Gerrie Nel, who's the head of our private prosecutions unit, and Ian Cameron, who's head of community safety at AfriForum. They will give you more information with regard to these specific 3 cases. I'm going to ask Advocate Nel to start.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Kriel. Let me just start with a bit of background. Now, firstly, this private prosecution unit was started because of a perception of selective prosecution by the NPA. Now, this selective prosecution manifests itself in different ways. Let me start with the first instance is with the withdrawal, was the withdrawal of the Jiba prosecution. Now, the Jiba matter, it's got a long history. The NPA decided to withdraw the charges against Ms. Jiba. That was set aside, the withdrawal, as an irrational decision by the High Court. The High Court set it aside and referred the matter back to be enrolled. Instead of enrolling the matter, Mr. Abrams, as he then was the National Director of Public Prosecutions, referred the matter to the Northwest, the Director of Public Prosecution in the Northwest, who decided not to institute prosecution against Ms. Jiba. We have, on behalf of General Boyson, about 2 years ago, applied for a Nolly Prosecute certificate, and we're still awaiting the issuing of a Nolly Prosecute certificate. So that's one way in which it manifests itself. It's where matters are withdrawn. And the other way is where you just decide not to prosecute. That's a Tani Manise matter. We decide not to prosecute. But then we also had the debacle around Mr. Gordon, where there was a decision taken to prosecute. So, and later the prosecution service had to withdraw it because that decision was irrational to prosecute. So there's selective prosecution in refusing to prosecute and to prosecute. Yesterday, we all know that the NPA gave notice that they will withdraw the charges against General Boyce. Now again, we said all along, lots of prosecutors, even the prosecutors working on the particular matter, indicated that the decision to prosecute was irrational. Yesterday, the NPA decided not to prosecute. We also must remember the matters against General Dramat and General Sabia. Again, those people were prosecuted just to have those matters withdrawn years later. So selective prosecution manifests itself in irrational prosecutions, irrational withdrawals of prosecutions, and irrational decisions not to prosecute. Then we've about 15 months ago, indicated that we are looking at the on-point matter, and that we would, if the NPA decides not to prosecute, that we would certainly consider a private prosecution. What's important about the on-point matter is that Mr. Kriel sitting next to me is the complainant in that particular matter. Now, just to give you a bit of background, now the matter, the on-point matter, was struck off the roll on the 5th of August 2015. But to enroll the matter, the prosecuting service decided to prosecute. So there was a case, the accused appeared in court, one of the accused got ill, and the matter was struck off the roll, and they couldn't proceed with the matter. We then, on the 14th of March 2018, inquired from the NPA if they've taken any steps to re-enroll the matter, and if they have any intention to enroll the matter, in the failure of which we would have intention to prosecute the matter. Now, on the 11th of April 2018, the NPA indicated that The matter was then allocated to the Priority Crimes Litigation Unit. Now, this is a commercial crime case. The matter was prosecuted by the Commercial Crimes Unit of the NPA, but in April, we were informed that the matter was allocated to the PCLU unit and that we will get a response before August 2018. Nothing happened. The NPA then informed us that we could expect a decision on the 11th of November 2018. Nothing happened. We inquired again on the 12th of December, and we received an interesting response that Advocate Raymond Mutenjwa, with dealing with the matter, was in court and couldn't answer our inquiries. Then on the 12th of February, the NPA indicated the following. The NPA wrote us a letter saying they received feedback from the prosecuting team in November 2018 that Advocate Pretorius was evaluating the recommendations and that they will come back to us in the first term of this year. So nothing happened. We still haven't received any feedback from the NPA. It's now 15 months since we initiated this whole process, which was in March 2018, to force the NPA to re-enroll this matter. What one has to know is that the NPA already took a decision before this matter was enrolled in 2015 that there was a case. The accused that became ill is now well and fine, and he recovered, but they've still have not taken any steps to re-enroll the matter. Then there's a different matter. During the funeral of Ms. Winnie Mandela, at one of the functions, a policeman, a senior colonel in the South African Police Service, was assaulted by Mr. Malema, and we've also included in this matter Mr. Ndlozi. Now, what's important about this is it was an assault of a senior policeman in full uniform. He was on duty and doing what he was supposed to do. It happened in public. It happened in the presence of the generals of the armed forces. Now, all the generals of the different divisions of the South African Defence Force, they were all present when this colonel was assaulted. There's various media photographs in the media about the incident. There were video cameras, there were cameras about this incident, there were footage about this incident. And then, very importantly, in the case docket, they've included CCTV footage of this whole incident, clearly indicate the assault on this policeman. This happened on the 14th of April, 2018. What's also interesting, it happened on the 14th of April. On the 25th of April, the investigating officer informed the complainant in this matter that the lawyers of the EFF would like to meet with him to resolve this issue. So the investigating officer then informed the complainant that they would want to meet. We have then consulted with the complainant, and we indicated that that shouldn't happen, that justice should happen. What's also happened in this particular matter is that the case docket disappeared. So this case docket disappeared, and under mysterious conditions, we complained. We sent various letters to the superiors of the investigating officer indicating that this disappearance of the case docket should be investigated. One cannot allow a case docket of this magnitude and of very well-known people as accused would just disappear without any further investigation. We haven't had any feedback about the disappearance of this particular case docket, but now the case docket has appeared. So there's a whole process of reconstructing the case docket. We were also involved in that process of reconstructing the case docket, resubmitting statements, and ensuring that there's an investigation, that there's a docket that could be presented to the National Prosecuting Authority. As early as March 2019, this year, we were informed by the investigating officer that they presented the case docket to the National Prosecuting Authority. There were certain inquiries by the NPA. We assisted with those inquiries. the investigating officer informed us on the 17th of June that there will be, no, before the 17th of June, he informed us that there will be a decision by the NPA by 17th June. We haven't had any feedback on this very serious matter on CCTV footage with a case docket consisting of statements of police generals and other generals. There was just a reluctance to take a decision and to place this matter on the court roll. Mr. Cameron will deal with another matter of the illegal possession and discharge of firearms. Let me just conclude by saying that what's important about all these matters is that in the one matter, in the on-point, Mr. Kriel is the complainant in the matter. In the assault matter, we appearing on behalf of the complainant in that particular matter. In the illegal possession and discharge, Mr. Kamfer, who's the legal and risk manager of community safety in AfriForum, he's the complainant. We have taken a firm decision to force the NPA to do their duty. By means of a mandamus, one can approach the High Court to force the NPA just to take decisions. That's all we require. You know, a failure to take prosecutorial decisions cripple the criminal justice system. Because if they fail to take decisions, the matter will never be enrolled. If they fail to take decisions, we can never get involved to apply for a nolle prosequi certificate. So a failure to take prosecutorial decisions cripples the criminal justice system, and it prevents anyone from ensuring that justice is done. So we will, and we've given notice to the National Prosecuting Authority that we will take steps to force them just to do their duty, just to take decisions that they should take in the normal scope of business.
Thank you, Advocate Nel. Now, Ian Cameron will give us some background on the firearm case.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to just give an overview of the case that most of you know about, and I would like to just repeat the video that many of you might have seen just before I start.
Not a problem.
I thought there was some form of discrimination because I didn't have any mics on my side. There we go. So I'm going to show you the video first just to refresh everyone's memory just before we start with an overview. So I think everyone knows that video. I think it spread like wildfire across the country after it had happened, and we heard very interesting theories from the EFF themselves regarding what actually happened there, from fireworks to toy guns and so forth. I would like to give an overview of it. Marnus Kamfer, who's the legal and risk manager of community safety, is standing at the back there, and you're welcome to speak with him also afterwards. He's the complainant in this matter. On the 1st of August in 2018, we laid charges, firstly regarding the firing of a firearm in a public space, obviously without good reason to do so, and as well as the possession of a firearm and ammunition without the necessary license or authorization. This happened at the Littleton police station here in Centurion, after which it was then referred to Mdatsane, where the matter actually happened during the EFF's 5-year birthday celebrations. We obviously then also included the request to the South African Police Service that Adrian Snyman, who is the security boss of Julius Malema, should also be investigated. And we also then laid a complaint with CIRA, who, as you know, is the regulatory authority of the private security industry in South Africa, that he should be investigated. And the reason for this, and it's not to get sidetracked, it's just important to understand that Snyman is already a very controversial figure regarding his possible involvement in previous discretions. Then regarding the 19th of August, and it's very important to refer to this, and I would like to just read some of it to you. The South African Police Service reported that a raid had been performed on Snyman's offices where several firearms had been confiscated, and it's very important to highlight this because this shows us that some form of a ballistic test had to have been done. They wouldn't have done this if some form of ballistic matter or some form of evidence wasn't collected on the scene where that video was recorded. So somehow that indicates to us that it couldn't just have been a toy gun. and fireworks going off. I would then like to go back to what happened in September. We received a call from the investigating officer, a colonel in Datsani in the Eastern Cape, that then confirmed to us that ballistic tests had been finalized. So that already debunks the theory that a real rifle or a real firearm of some sort was not used by Malema in the video you just saw. After that, on the 20th of September, we sent another letter to the investigating officer asking for an update regarding the investigation. 28th of September in 2018, the investigating officer wrote a letter to us confirming that the docket was already sent to the MPA in East London for their consideration. On the 21st of November 2018, Tsepu Ndwalaza, spokesperson of the Eastern Cape MPA, then suddenly in the media denied ever receiving the docket. So we then wrote to both parties saying, but what's wrong? What is happening with this miscommunication between the MPA and the police? And obviously it's worrying to then not really know whether police are speaking the truth or not, or whether the MPA, for that matter, are being truthful or not. On the 22nd of November, we sent another letter to the investigating officer inquiring about these discrepancies between the SAPS and the MPA. And then we also asked them to confirm whether the statements were taken from not only Mr. Ndlozi of the EFF, but also Advocate Dali Mpofu. And it's very important to once again emphasize this, because he is not only a senior officer of the court, he is seen in other parts of the video high-fiving Mr. Malema after he fired shots. It would be very worrying that senior court officials in South Africa are seen being part of these types of actions, which are completely unlawful, and it misrepresents what justice is meant to stand for in the country, and it obviously also skews what is allowed and what is not allowed when we see a government keeping totally silent about what happened. After that, on the 10th of December 2018, we asked for an update again from the South African Police Service, specifically the investigating officer. The same was done on the 9th of January, when we still didn't hear anything. It was once again done on the 29th of January, where we then said we would escalate the matter if we didn't get feedback. Shortly after that, we immediately received a phone call from the investigating officer saying that the prosecutor has the docket and that they are now busy with the further handling of the case. It's important to just note that on 2 occasions informal updates were received by the prosecutor saying that they are busy with it, so that was informally confirmed through phone calls that was made by us, and that we didn't receive any form of update from the MPA themselves. On the 21st of June 2019, we phoned the prosecutor again, and we were notified that the docket is complete, and this is once again important to emphasize, that charge sheets were drafted and that they were sent to her seniors. So just the fact that charge sheets had been drafted already indicates that the decision has been made to prosecute Mr. Malema, yet we still don't see anything happening. On the 4th of July, we sent another letter to the prosecutor requesting an update, and then also we asked for the identities of the seniors of this prosecutor so that we can then follow up about these specific charge sheets that I've already mentioned. We still haven't received any form of feedback. In fact, our phone calls are now also being ignored and no form of message is being answered by them. The next part of this firearm issue is regarding the 102 investigation, or Section 102 investigation, that we've requested to the National Commissioner of Police, Lieutenant General Sithole. This happened on the 11th of December in 2018. You might have seen it on a statement that we released. In terms of Schedule 102 of the Firearm Controls Act, a person can be declared unfit to own a firearm after an investigation by the registrar, which in this case would be the National Commissioner of Police, Lieutenant General Sithole. This occurs when the person, among others, indicate that he or she intends to kill him or herself or someone else with a firearm or other dangerous weapons, and or because of the person's tendency towards violence, which means that it is no one's interest for him or her to own a firearm. The reason we did this and after or following this specific video is when Mr. Malema, not only on social media but on other platforms too, said that when it comes to his family he would shoot to kill. This immediately brings the question to us whether he is indeed in possession of a firearm, regardless of whether it really belongs to him or not, or whether he is licensed to do so. And it also seems that regardless of the amount of times that he has clashed with some part of the law, with all the assault cases and everything that has been opened, this once again didn't bear any fruits for us. In fact, this affidavit was sent to the National Commissioner on the 11th of December. Further letters dated 12 March 2019, 26 March 2019, and 9 April 2019 was sent to the Commissioner, and he didn't even put in the effort to just say that he received the letter. On the 25th of April, we then sent it to the Minister of Police, Mr. Bekitele, after which receipt was confirmed, and he then referred it to the necessary departments in the police. Once again, it's being ignored. With everything that I've just mentioned, I think it's clear that we have no alternative but to make the assumption that Mr. Malema not only has some form of a special relationship with senior members of the ANC, but in fact that he has a very special relationship with senior members of the NPA, and specifically the leadership of the NPA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian. My colleague Nante Skelde, who's also here, I accompanied him to Bloemfontein in one of the appearances of Mr. Malema, and Mr. Malema then afterwards we listened to him speaking, and in a threatening way he referred to AfriForum to say die poppe gaan dans, and he was right, die poppe gaan dans, but what he did not know that he will be on the wrong side of the dancing that is going to occur. As Advocate Nel mentioned, we have now written a letter to Advocate Batoy, the head of the NPA, giving her the facts with regard to these three cases. These cases lie before the NPA. We believe they're strong cases, and we now want her to make a decision to prosecute. It should have been done a long time ago, and as Advocate Nel said, failing to do so, we will go to court to force the NPA to simply do their job. And it's a sad day if civil society has to force the NPA simply to do what they should do, and that is to prosecute without fear, favor, or prejudice. So you're welcome to ask any questions. Is there any questions that you want to raise? Yes, ma'am.
From Newsroom Africa. I just want to find out, there was an issue around the ambassador to Denmark, Mr. Mandela. Are you still going to court with that issue? And what would you say around some people saying that you are deliberately targeting the EFF with also coming up with all of these cases?
Well, specifically, what our case is to make sure that there is equality before the law. So from our side, we cannot simply prosecute somebody and make a decision we want to go ahead with some kind of political prosecution. You cannot prosecute somebody for political reasons. You can only prosecute somebody if they transgress the law and you have facts before you. The fact that Mr. Malema is now involved in 5 cases with us says more about Mr. Malema's behavior than that of AfriForum. We cannot take him on if he does not transgress the law. So the fact that there are so many cases against him, it's because of his own behavior and the fact that he is acting as if he's above the law. And for us, the principle, it's not about Mr. Malema as a person. It's about the fact that he believes he's above the law, and that is one of our core focus areas, to make sure that there is equality before the law. So if Mr. Malema starts acting in a way that every law-abiding citizen should behave, then of course there will be no cases against him. So the fact that we are targeting him is simply because of his own actions.
Mr. Kriel, may I just also say something, and that is that if you've listened to the feedback that Mr. Kriel has given about other matters, it becomes clear that this is one of lots of other matters that we're dealing with. To understand, to say that we're targeting any person or any political grouping, one must understand private prosecutions. Now, you can only get involved in private prosecutions once the NPA decided not to prosecute. And so, and I do it again, I do it reluctantly though, I have challenged people before to indicate to us in matters where there's been a decision not to prosecute, where there was a case to answer to, where we decided not to get involved. So one has to understand private prosecution to understand what we're doing. And the challenge remains, if there's matters out there where there's a winnable case and where we decided not to prosecute, confront us with those. If you confront us with those, then certainly it will be discussed. I forgot to say something. You know, I don't think anybody would argue against the fact that it's absolutely serious to assault a policeman on duty. I cannot do any better than to quote Mr. Fikile Mbalula when he was still the Minister of Police. He said, "No one will assault an on-duty police officer and walk free." That's what he said as a minister. He went further because we all know Mr. Malema. He said, "We will crush them, we will squeeze them, but they won't walk free." So what do we have here? We have here a matter with CCTV footage happen in front of senior officers in this country that just there's been no prosecution. So certainly our involvement it has nothing to do with specific individuals, it has to do with the understanding of private prosecutions and the way we deal with it in our office.
I think we also need to ask the question, and I must mention that sorry. We definitely also need to ask what the influence of his actions are on the public. We've recently, in the last few months, especially seen that there are several cases where in the public, for example, at funerals, we saw a few videos in KwaZulu-Natal, in Mpumalanga, where members of the public are now firing firearms into the air when, you know, they are busy performing some form of a funeral service. It's unacceptable. And when we see someone like Mr. Malema getting away with it, it sets a certain precedent in the country that acting in a certain way is okay. And now we just see also the complaints regarding that also falling on actually no one's attention. It's as though it just gets made quiet. So it's important to consider the impact of Mr. Malema's actions on the public, and it definitely polarizes communities on ground level when they see that when one person acts in a certain way, there's absolutely no reaction. But if someone else might do it, there's a hellfire that breaks loose, especially in the media.
It's Levanta from ENCA. I've got a couple of questions, and they're for clarity. So you basically accusing the NPA of dragging its feet. Shouldn't then your focus be on the NPA with regards to then, you know, dragging their feet when it comes to prosecuting Mr. Malema? And also, you mentioned, Mr. Cameron, you mentioned the fact that there's a special relationship that Malema seems to be having. Can you maybe elaborate on that? And also, wouldn't then the letter to Advocate Batoy be pointless if he's got this sort of stronghold over the NPA? And are there any deadlines that are set out with regards to this letter that you've sent out to the advocate? Because you said that if she's not able to prosecute, then you are more than welcome, or you're more than willing to take over. So are there any sort of time frames that you're looking at that you've put forward? And then just my last question, Mr. Kriel, in terms of this rebuilding the case, especially with this assault of the police officer, we understand that the docket disappeared, correct? But there's or you mentioned there's CCTV footage that was there. Has that been recovered, possibly? How long do you see yourself, taking to build this case and eventually handing it over to the NPA? Thank you.
Okay, I think there are various issues that the different people from us will answer to. I don't know if you want to say.
Sure. I'll start, and then we can start moving the microphones to one side again. It's quite simple. It's 11 months after the case was opened. Why has nothing been done? And I think the point of this entire conference is the fact that the NPA hasn't done anything. And I think they can elaborate on that, but it's quite clear that the NPA hasn't taken any action. We don't see any feedback. In fact, they don't even give us any form of acknowledgement of receipt when we ask for details regarding the prosecution of cases. So we need to ask the question, but is there some form of favor? Because when you're before the law, all of us should be equal. It shouldn't be a case of Animal Farm, excuse the pun after we've spoken about Thandi Modise and her farm, but it shouldn't be a case where everyone's equal, but some are more equal than others. And at the moment, it feels that way with the way that Malema's cases are being handled.
Which question are you answering?
The one where you asked about the special relationship between Malema and the NPA.
Just maybe I'll just say a few words, and then Advocate Nel can answer the rest. The fact is we are now focusing on the NPA, and that is why we wrote that letter to Advocate Batoy to make sure that we put pressure on the NPA to do so. Just with regard to the question that Ian answered, the question is, why is there no prosecution? If anybody else, not in a political position, makes themselves guilty of corruption or assaults somebody or unlawfully uses a firearm, there will be prosecution. And now we need to speculate. Is it because of political reasons? Is it because of ties that Julius Malema has and people that want to protect him? And that kind of speculation is bound to start if we don't see action from the NPA. But Advocate Nel can say more with regard to the deadlines.
Thank you very much. Ma'am, indeed, you're 100% correct. The focus should be on the NPA, and it has been on the NPA for a while now. And that's why we now given them a letter saying that we will follow the process of a mandamus. I don't want to go through all the detail, but I'm going to quote just one paragraph. We sent in a letter to the NPA, the head of the NPA, on 4 April 2019 about the on-point matter. In that particular letter, it's a long letter, and you're welcome to copy after this. But we even say to her, this matter was initially being dealt with by the Serious Commercial Crimes Unit, where we expect the requisite expertise to deal with a case of this nature exists. Whilst we do not intend to be presumptuous, we do hold reservations as to whether similar expertise exists within the PCLU. We do not have any intention of being prescriptive regarding what unit deals with the matter, as long as it finally receives the prompt and appropriate attention it deserves. We've given them all the cooperation we could. We even said that it was dealt with by a specific unit. We worked with that specific unit. You're 100% correct. It should be on the NPA, the focus. That focus is on the NPA. We've written a letter that's part of your pack where we indicated that the NPA should take steps to ensure that decisions are taken. To delay a decision just will ensure that the criminal justice system will not function. So certainly, ma'am, you're right. The focus on the NPA. That's why we've given notice to the NPA that we will follow the process of a mandamus, which is order by court to force them to take decisions. As far as time frames in law is a very difficult thing to do. But sitting where I'm sitting, being confronted, I think if we don't get an answer from the NPA that would satisfy us, that we will start process within 30 days. But we have to allow the NPA now to understand that we're serious about this matter, that we will take steps and allow them to assist us.
Anton?
Anton Meyer from Pretoria FM, Advocate. Now, just on that mandamus, what happens if the NPA ignores the mandamus given by the court?
they will be sanctioned by the court. The court will sanction the NPA for not proceeding with the mandamus. It's a court order. It's like anybody transgressing a court order, there'll always be sanctioned. There'll be sanction for the NPA as well.
And then on that application, is it something that the NPA can oppose?
Yes, they can oppose by indicating that they have taken reasonable steps, or that we're premature about this, that the investigation is still progressing, and all this kind of thing. So it's when we initially started with the private prosecution unit, we contemplated that we might have to approach court, and we will. And this is perhaps one of those matters where we will have the opportunity to force the NPA to take decisions. It's one of the it's one of the two matters where decisions not to prosecute have been delaying the whole process. I mean, I think in the Jima matter, there was also a decision not to prosecute or to issue a not a prosecute certificate has put us on the back foot, and this is one of the others. I did not answer the question about the police docket. Now, we've also, as far as the police docket is concerned, we had consultation with the investigating officer. He indicated to us that he compiled the docket. We assisted him with statements from our client. We assisted him with handing over the CCTV footage to the South African Police Service, which we had. So they've got that. But we haven't seen the docket. So we also wrote to the NPA saying that we're not even sure that the docket that was now before the prosecutor to make a decision contains all the statements that it should. Those are all the things, ma'am, that we would have to look into if we get a not a prosecute certificate. As far as the assault matter is concerned, we say it clearly that if there's no prosecution by the NPA in the assault matter, we will consider very strongly initiating a prior prosecution.
There's another question there. Yes.
Alex Mitchie from News 24. Just on the back of that, of what my colleagues said, and dealing with the NPA, and you guys saying that there is this idea that Malema receives special treatment. But the processes you guys are going through, is that not just indicative of the criminal justice system and the NPA at present? I mean, I can cite many cases that have been dragging for years, where charges are dropped and it's struck from the roll, and then, you know, we don't even know if it's coming back or not. So you guys say there's a sense where he's getting special treatment, but I can think of many cases that are linked to, you know, well-known people, but also cases that are linked to no ones, where the exact same issues are happening, where things are dragging for years and years, charges are temporarily withdrawn, and things are struck from the court, and then they bring something back. Is that not just indicative of the criminal justice system we're in, as opposed to Malema receiving preferential treatment?
And before you answer that, can you please answer my colleague's question about Zinzi Mandela? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that afterwards.
Okay. Alex, to answer your question, I think you're correct, and I think that was one of the main reasons that at least there was a perception that there's selective prosecution, that all the prosecutions don't get the attention it deserves, and you might be correct. We can deal with those matters, Alex, that lands on our table, people that approach us, and as Mr. Krill has said, we do what we can with the amount of people we have and the resources we have. But certainly the challenge is out there. If there's any other matter which we think it's in the public interest, because we have to some way or other decide which matters to pursue, and the public interest is definitely an aspect that we look at. Now, this is in the public interest. It's not in the public interest, Alex, necessarily because it's Mr. Malema. It's certainly in the public interest because a policeman in full uniform was assaulted. So that's why it's in the public interest. It's also in the public interest because every person, every politician that we've heard up until and after the election focused on corruption and said that they're dead against corruption. They'll do what they can to rid this country of corruption. That's why we took steps, because Alex, and the last two things I'll say is, it must be indicative of what AfriForum is about if Mr. Krill is the complainant in the on-point matter and Mr. Kamfer is the complainant in the firing of a firearm at. So that's indicative of AfriForum taking steps to ensure that matters get engaged.
Yes, just with regard to the Zinzi Mandela case, that is actually being handled by my colleague at AfriForum, Deputy CEO Alana Bailey, who does our international relations. In that case, we decided to refer the matter to the Human Rights Commission to first give them the first bite of the cherry, and then we will look with regard to what their response would be and what their findings would be, and then we would take a further decision. Why it is important to us, I think, in our country at the moment, I think we all have an obligation to make sure that we promote mutual recognition and respect amongst communities. And especially in a polarized society, when prominent people that are actually representatives of our government make these kind of statements, it is important that we see strong action from the South African government. Because if they do not act, we are happy about the fact that Minister Pandor made a statement, but we believe it's more serious than simply to give somebody a slap on the wrist in that regard. And therefore we believe it's good that the Human Rights Commission does it. Unfortunately, the same problems that we have with the NPA, we also have with the Human Rights Commission in terms of some of the decisions they have taken. Also in that case that we had against Mr. Malema with regard to hate speech, they found it was not. We disagree. But we are taking that Human Rights Commission decision on review. That case will be in the courts. I don't know exactly what date that is going to happen. They opposing that. But the fact is, if these institutions are dysfunctional, you can act in one of two ways. You can say, well, it's of no use. You're not going to be successful, so just leave it. But then in the end, you are actually giving up on the future, because we have to make sure that the NPA functions well. We must make sure that the Chapter 9 institutions of the Constitution functions well. And even if we have our doubts, we will continue with the democratic process and make sure that if they are not willing to do their job on their own, we will use the legal system to force them to do so.
Kali, just on that matter, what's AfriForum's position on hate speech and what constitutes hate speech? And is there anything that Zinzi Mandela said that you would say constitutes hate speech?
Well, no, but your complaint is also what we believe the government should do. There's a bigger bar if somebody is in a prominent position and calls people racists or rapists, as she has done. She has actually criminalized the whole community by saying they are a bunch of thieves and racists, and those issues should be taken on, and you can be held accountable. Hate speech as such is where you actually promote violence. Hate speech is something, there also needs to be clarity in the courts with regard to when can something be seen as hate speech or not. I think the Constitution is clear that it is when one promotes violence. But hurtful statements is not necessarily hate speech because it does not promote violence. So there's actually quite a distinction between the two. But because it's not promoting violence does not mean that it should not be taken on. If you take, for instance, the terrible statements by somebody like Penny Sparrow, which also did not promote violence, but it is still a transgression of the law, even if it's not hate speech. And we believe in this case there's a strong case against Ms. Mandela, but it's not necessarily going to be a hate speech case where she promoted violence. that's everything. I don't know if for ETV, if you want to do some Afrikaans, or will you do Afrikaans interviews? Anton, Afrikaans. Just quick Afrikaans bite. Okay.
I need Latin as well, please.
Okay. And we also have our senior prosecutor, Mr. Elias Mangwale, at the back, who will be able to give you statements in Zulu, Sepedi, and Tswana. You can actually do interviews with him in 7 languages. Just in Afrikaans, we're not going to go through the whole process, of course. I'll just make a few short statements. Van AfriForum se kant af voel ons baie sterk daaroor dat daar gelykheid voor die reg moet wees en dat niemand verhewe is bo die reg nie. Nou wat ons baie duidelik sien in meneer Julius Malema se optrede is dat hy dink hy's onaantastbaar en hy tree op asof hy verhewe is bo die reg. En ons gaan seker maak dat 'n baie sterk boodskap aan meneer Malema uitgestuur word dat hy nie verhewe is bo die reg nie, dat hy tot verantwoording geroep sal word. En ons is bereid om hof toe te gaan om die Nasionale Vervolgingsgesag te dwing om teen hom op te tree met 'n mandamus aansoek. Ons glo ons het hier 3 sake, 'n aanrandingssaak, 'n korrupsiesaak en ook 'n onwettige afvuur van 'n vuurwapensaak waar die feite baie sterk is, waar die Nasionale Vervolgingsgesag doeteenvoudig sloer om hulle werk te doen. En ons wil geregtigheid hê en ons gaan toesien dat ons hulle dwing om hulle werk te doen as hulle dit nie vrywillig doen nie. Okay, thank you very much. Have a great day.